Yeah. Hello, everyone. On a nice summer day, at least here. I know the East Coast might be not so nice summery. I hope everything is well for everyone who's maybe more east. So today, I think if there's no other questions or something, we start directly with Julian and his brain trust exercise. So maybe only as introduction. Um, so the brain trust exercise is really he provides the material. We sent already also the Google Doc around, and he has questions and just everything that comes to your mind, how to solve the challenges. And I let it take Julian from here, and I make share screen also possible for you, Julian, if you want to do a share screen.
Sure. Hi. So Sandra asked me to do this brain trust exercise after we tried it at another event, and it was it was an interesting exercise. I'm looking for feedback from people who in this research computing background who may have different ways of looking at things. And I think as Sandra mentioned last time, it's a bit like rubber duck debugging for ideas, because sometimes we have our own narrow perspectives, and you bring a wealth of experience and background and different ways of looking at things. So this is hopefully it'll be a fun exercise. I will start sharing my screen. And where is that browser? Share. Okay. I'm going to hide the floating meeting controls, and can people see this brain trust help for Exosphere window?
Yes.
Okay. And I'll put it into view mode, and I'll hide this. Okay. So a little bit of background. I worked at Cyverse from early 2016 until last year, middle of last year. And in that time, I worked on the Atmosphere cloud computing product for Cyverse. I worked a lot on specifically on the back end and accounting allocation systems. In that time, I saw Atmosphere really made it quite easy for researchers to use cloud computing, but it had problems of maintainability and sustainability. It was part of an NSF funded project, very successful project with many products in their suite, but NSF tends to fund mainly novel things and things that are exciting, like any political organization, I guess. And so as a result, Atmosphere was very successful at Cyverse and was also taken up by Jetstream, a project, NSF infrastructure project out of Indiana University, and TAC with collaborators at Arizona, and also use Atmosphere as a nice user interface to cloud computing. So cloud computing, a little bit more background. I'm sure you've all used Amazon Web Services, or maybe DigitalOcean or something like that. It's where you can have elastic compute is the big draw of that, being able to run a high throughput computing jobs, as opposed to HPC, which is really high performance, high memory computation. And so what a colleague and I decided to do was, as a experiment while we were at Cyverse, to try if we could build a user-friendly interface for Openstack, which is an open source cloud computing operating system, you can think of it, that a lot of National Science Foundation projects use. Research clouds all around the world use Openstack in order to provide the actual underlying open cloud computing. And this allows researchers to be able to do all the things that you could do with Amazon or Google Cloud or Azure, those especially the elastic cloud virtual machine things, but with open source software on hardware provisioned and paid for by science grants and things like that. And so we decided to build a slightly different take on a user interface for researchers. We didn't want to build any services ourselves. We just wanted to use the Openstack by itself. And so this is a little bit of a background here. So this is where we came to write this thing called Exosphere, as a pun on atmosphere. It was really out there. It was just very different from how things were done before. So we don't, unlike a platform like Atmosphere is really, it's both a piece of software and a platform, a service that you have to run. Exosphere is an application that you can download. You can use it from your phone. You can use it on your laptop, download it as an app. You can deploy it as a static HTML and JavaScript application on GitHub pages, for example. And so because we chose this path, we now have run into various kinds of challenges, some technical and some non-technical. And so we are at the point where we have a number of different roads that we could choose to solve these problems. And so I'll maybe stick to this, start with the non-technical challenges, because I think this is really where we need help. So I think I mentioned before, so the National Science Foundation and other funding agencies like to fund things that they understand. They understand how it fits into the ecosystem. They know that it's going to help their constituency, their domain scientists, the researchers, and they're not duplicating effort. This thing is going to work. And there's also this novelty aspect of, does it push the boundaries in some way? And then that's one hand, that's the funding issue. And then on the other side, there are our users who tend to not be, and we're not aiming for IT professionals who use this tool, unlike the standard OpenStack user interface called Horizon. Horizon was built for system admins, system administrators who are comfortable with setting up networks, like software-defined networks, firewall rules, handling SSH keys, creating all of those things. We wanted to have that same easy-to-use interface, approachability of Atmosphere that gave researchers just like, give me a virtual machine this big, this much memory, and give me a browser shell that I can access the terminal or a graphical desktop. That's what we wanted, but with like less of the services. So now we have this, but we have found, so this is the first big problem we have, and we keep coming across this, is the scope and the boundary of Exosphere's focus. So this is I'm going to pitch this as you as the problem that I would first like your attention to, and then maybe we might get to the nomenclature side. Hopefully somebody sent me okay, so somebody sent that doc. Okay, so Sandra posted that in the Slack. So this issue number one, this challenge here is, when people use Exosphere for the first time, invariably they end up with a situation with, okay, how do I run a Jupyter notebook? Is there a way I can do this easily? Or how do I get data from my laptop to Exosphere? And it's not, getting to know that Exosphere is not, it's not that virtual machine over there in the cloud. It's just a window into that. So once you've provisioned this virtual machine, it's up to you to do with it whatever you want. So that's one issue. And then the other one is, a lot of researchers now want to use containers. So how does that play in with Exosphere, which is a virtual machine management interface? And we kind of leave you alone after that. Eventually we will want to, there's on the roadmap, how do we make containers a first-class citizen in this world, allowing researchers to build container images and use them and things like that. But we don't have that yet. So we have plans and things, but we don't want to do things if it's just going to confuse matters even more. So I'm going to summarize this. So Exosphere is a very simple standalone tool that you can use interchangeably with other OpenStack API clients, I should say. And you can use Horizon to start a virtual machine. You can use Exosphere to stop it. You can use a command line client to start a virtual machine and manage it through Exosphere and continue managing it in something else. So without researchers knowing what Openstack is and necessarily, and then seeing Exosphere, how do we draw that boundary so that they can, so researchers or users can go, this is an Exosphere problem, or this is an OpenStack problem. This is what I can do with this limited, very sharp, specific tool. And at this point, I need to do sysadmin things myself, or ask my cloud operator or something like that. Help. Any ideas?
So I would like to start, if that's okay. I love it that I can do it from this side once this exercise. So one of, in regard to scope, I think what is really helpful to have something like a short demo video explaining exactly what you told now, or even show them maybe like what they can do to put the expectations at the right place. Because I think you made already the experiences, so that would be my idea, the experience that they have the question, what can they really do, and what they expect seems to be not always where the state of Exosphere is at the moment. Maybe that is one of the first things. Try to make it short, very precise, that the expectations are set. What is there? That doesn't mean that you cannot put something, for example, like roadmap or Outlook, where you say, oh, we want to go there, to not put them off if they expect more. But I think it's great to have something for the scope explaining directly, this is the scope at the moment. And yeah, that would be my first idea. And I open it to the floor.
Yeah, I would hop on that with, as Sandra said, like your example video, but yeah, in your documentations have use cases that are supported, and then maybe having an FAQ where you address like what Exosphere is, what it isn't. And I guess, yeah, as you have people say, can it do this? And your FAQ, you would say yes, or no, we don't support that, but you can do it in this way, or so I think, yeah, lots of, I guess documentation is probably a good way to go.
Yeah, I guess some of the things that, something that sometimes happens to me with when I read documentation is somebody has made this super general purpose tool, and everything they say keeps that general purpose in mind to the point where I can't figure out what it actually does. So with the use cases, having some particularly concrete ones might be nice.
So after this comment, only maybe a short comment from me. Do you have maybe collected all the questions which were coming in, so that you can maybe really refer to the ones who were asked most of the time? And then I give it to Shannon.
And here I sit, I'm coming at it from a completely different direction. So do you have a logo or an elevator pitch, 3 sentences, or anything like that? Because Exosphere didn't really get me where I thought I was going until you told me what this was. So exosphere is the outermost region of a planet's atmosphere. So basically what you're doing is you're operating in this outermost layer. So as a programmer, you know your different application layers. So you're in your outermost layer and you're navigating this outermost layer. So initially I was trying to think of something where don't write this down. But you know, when you're in the music studio, you've got the control board, and the control board does all of your balancing. It allows things to come in. It allows you to things to go out. And you know, when you're diagnosing when it's a problem, you know, are the switches all in the right place? Do you have the right things coming in? Do you have the right things going out? And if it's not with the control board, then you know it's with your cables, or with your instrument, or with your mic, or whatever. So if you're thinking exosphere, is it a rocket with a dashboard? And the last thing I want to do is use a term in the computer environment again that's dashboard, because there are too darn many dashboards. But is this your control navigation area within the cockpit of your rocket, or your flight machine of your choice? And it allows you to control that part. But if something's broken in the engine, you know, you got to go. So I'm thinking you need a logo that gives you this feeling that you are the API, the interface, the dashboard, the controller, the does that make sense? And I think if you can get that first image, that elevator, 2 sentences that people remember, that's what Exosphere is, then you're going to be able to get them into the FAQs and the documentation and all of that. But it's that first image and that first memorable sentence that's going to be able to define and give you your boundaries. I told you I was coming at it from a different.
That was fantastic. Thank you very much. That was very useful. I hadn't thought about that. So exactly, no, that proves the value of this, because it's a problem that can be approached and solved in different ways from different directions, depending on also a more visual person may actually immediately know that might be a good way to hook a visual person and explain to them what's going on. And versus the FAQs, some people will immediately, I know people like that, will immediately go for the written side of things. So it's not even like a right or wrong thing here. It could be a mutually self-reinforcing different modalities of explaining what's going on. So yes, thank you. That was very useful.
So I'm curious as to, I'm assuming that exosphere is like the next level beyond atmosphere. I assume that's the genealogy of the name. Did atmosphere itself build on what Horizon was, or is that just totally disconnected? I'm just curious, are we going up higher and higher in our level of abstraction, or is it less obvious than that?
I can give you a little bit of background. So I wasn't there from the very beginning, but I do know some of the ancestry of this. When Atmosphere was first conceived, OpenStack, I don't think was even really a thing. So there was no Horizon. And when OpenStack was originally built, it was meant to be used against something called Eucalyptus, which was something like OpenStack. It's a cloud operating system for creating your own infrastructure as a service. Eucalyptus did not end up being very successful. OpenStack came along, and it was initially it was a collaboration between NASA and Rackspace, and they collaborated and built this thing, and it sort of really took off. And so then Atmosphere was adapted to work with OpenStack, and OpenStack's API. And initially, Horizon was very rudimentary, and still to this day, the Horizon user interfaces, as I mentioned earlier, caters to sysadmins, people who run infrastructure for other people. And whereas Atmosphere from the beginning was aimed at plant scientists, there were some iterations of the early user interfaces for Atmosphere that is overtly appealing to actually plant biologists initially, because Cybers used to be iPlant Collaborative. It came out of the plant sciences. So, and it had a much more fun feel, easy to do, and guidance for how to get things done. So that's the relationship between Atmosphere and OpenStack. Oh, the other thing is that, so Horizon is specific to OpenStack. It's actually meant for managing OpenStack. Atmosphere was designed to, as is Exosphere to some extent, designed to be able to be pointed at any cloud. I think I mentioned this here in one of the technical challenges further down, support for commercial platforms. On the Atmosphere roadmap and on our roadmap for Exosphere, there's always the option of being able to point the same user interface at a public commercial cloud, like AWS, Google Cloud, Azure, something like that, and present to the researcher, to the user, the same interface, the same pane of glass window. Give me a virtual machine, make it do this, give me a Jupyter notebook. And if they have Google credits, if they're Google Cloud credits, they can launch it on Google Cloud. If they have Amazon credits, they can use AWS. Or if they have an Exceed account and they have an allocation on one of the big research cloud providers, they can use that. And then they don't have to, ideally not have to relearn multiple user interfaces and multiple ways of accessing it. So we are standing on the shoulders of giants, Jack. Yes. I was a core Atmosphere developer for quite a few years, and this came as a result of seeing the power of giving researchers a simple user interface to cloud computing, and we wanted to carry that legacy forward. So this is a much simpler architecture than Atmosphere. As I mentioned earlier, there are no services involved. Cloud operators don't have to host any extra services. They can provide this as a downloadable app or as a static HTML page. So it has different trade-offs. Some things are more difficult to do because of our chosen architecture, but we're trying to keep all the nice things that Atmosphere gave researchers, like I don't have to SSH. Like if the first thing that you tell a researcher is you have to create an SSH key and you have to add this key pair, and then you have to, you've probably lost like half the people. So yes.
Can I ask you how this relates to the Genie project, and then things like Cloud Lab and all those others? I've been involved in all of those, and they all have their own way of getting around doing pure OpenStack or Ellipses kind of stuff. Are these all kind of convergent? Are they all totally different tracks?
Those don't ring a bell for me. So I haven't been in this space for that long. So can you is it Genie project?
Genie, G-E-N-I. It was actually more about building virtual networks. And of course, those nodes would be virtual machines. So you do a lot of this sort of at the same time. Software-defined networking came out.
Yes, actually,
there's a lot of language around that, and eventually Cloud Lab.
Yes,
and then took it to the next level, and then Chameleon, and then Jetstream. And so I've kind of every time I learn one, I forget and learn the next. So right now I understand Atmosphere, and I can see where Exosphere is going. But having done AWS and these others, looks totally different to me.
Yeah. Okay. So Genie rang a bell, but when you said Cloud Lab, it became clear. Yes, I've used Cloud Lab when I was working at Cybers to spin up test OpenStack clouds. So it allows you to provision these experiments of building your own cloud and testing applications against it. So yes, I've used Cloud Lab. It's a neat project. And Chameleon, I've used Chameleon, and we're collaborating with Jetstream. People use Exosphere with Jetstream. So behind Jetstream is OpenStack, and Jetstream allows people to have pure API access to OpenStack, and Exosphere just talks directly to the OpenStack API. So if you can have access to OpenStack directly, then you can use Exosphere. So it's an alternative way to use OpenStack and to access OpenStack resources it's not a replacement necessarily for something like Cloud Lab's ability to spin up experiments. But once you have spun up, say, an OpenStack cloud, you could, on Cloud Lab, you could point Exosphere at it. You couldn't point Atmosphere at it. So that was this is the problem that we had, is that Atmosphere required extensive configuration and customization to work with any OpenStack cloud that you had to point in at. But the goal for Exosphere was always, this should work against Chameleon, this should work against Jetstream. Nectar, some Australian folks, they run a research cloud there. They gave us access to their OpenStack cloud, and they were doing things slightly differently, but it works against their OpenStack cloud. So I can add different OpenStack clouds almost like you can Slack channels. So I can have Jetstream, I can have Cyverse, I can have Oak Ridge, I could have NCSA, I could have all these OpenStack clouds that I have access to, almost like you do with different Slack channels, and then swap between them. I can see my resources across all of those OpenStack clouds. And so that's the pitch basically, but that's like that's the future. At the moment, we just want to make it easy for people to launch virtual machines and use them.
Well, I know when we took a workshop with TAC last summer, we were using Atmosphere to spin up machines that we could then install Docker containers. So you eventually get to that point where you can have your containers. But occasionally they would throw in, well, you could just do this on the OpenStack command line, blah, 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 and they would do that and say, well, you just lost me. Or they would do some sort of other, DevOps tool to get around things. And, well, for those of us who don't know those, that's just a huge barrier.
So I'll tell you my little dream that I had one day, which is that I would love to be able to show researchers and users of Exosphere what's going on behind the curtain. So you always get the people who wants to know, like, what is this doing?
What are the commands it's generating? Right?
Exactly. So I want to be able to show somebody a bash script that if they copy and paste that, or a Python script and put it into a Jupyter notebook, they would be able to end up with the same virtual machine configuration and setup in order to maybe to make things reproducible when working with colleagues. Or next time, instead of me pressing buttons, I just want to run this this script and being able to export user those commands and letting users do that is I feel it empowers. Matt Vaughan has this thing about programmable cyber infrastructure, and I don't want to trap people in a user interface, because you cannot build a user interface that is going to be able to solve everybody's problem and that people will not eventually outgrow. So I don't want to trap people in the user interface. But I want to make it easier for them to, if they do want to, now maybe script this and launch 10 virtual machines and then do something with them. I can help them on that journey.
Well, demystifying is the word I always use.
Exactly.
You can demystify programs so much better. Yes.
That is a really interesting approach. Okay, so I'm going to have to write that down. Can we demystify what's going on? Thanks, Jack.
I like this idea very much. My experience, and maybe that's a different experience dependent on the user communities I work with. It's often, or was often in biology, for example, it was okay that it was hidden. It was like, yes, a rough understanding what was going on was fine for trusting it. But really seeing scripts, I've seen really some people then like, oh, that is a, so yeah, let's go to the buttons. So your community might be different, so your experience. So I'm only not sure.
It's the verbose mode, right?
Yeah.
No, but I mean, being able to, that's one of the big problems with any GUI, right, is you can't script it. And if you're providing the path to go from what your familiar GUI to how to put things in scripts, that's very helpful. It's one of the things I always like about Jupyter Notebooks, right, is they're kind of halfway between a GUI and code. So that sounds fairly appealing to me.
Oh, also to me, I was only like a little bit careful saying everyone wants that. It should be still an option, not the way to go.
Would this provide, so when it's demystifying, is it demystifying OpenStack? Is it going to be showing you OpenStack commands?
That's what I was thinking, yes, is that depending on whether you want to see raw curl API calls over HTTPS, or whether you want to see Python code that uses libcloud or uses the native OpenStack libraries, or maybe bash commands that also use the Python commands under the hood. Those are like the three options I'm thinking of. But then as soon as you said that, and as soon as Jack mentioned like demystifying, I was thinking, okay, so we can show them the commands we're doing, but can we also, for people who want to look behind the veil, as Sandra pointed out, can we have like an advanced tab or a dragons be here be dragons sort of a tab behind everything where it's like, do you want to see what's actually happening? And then we can show them, even if we just show them graphs or like and I mean graphs is like graphs of nodes and networks, and this is your virtual machine, and this is how it actually works under the hood if you are interested.
I'm wondering if one of the use cases for this tool could be a tutorial for the lower level technologies, as a way of teaching the lower level technology.
Can you expand a bit on that, Steve?
Well, okay, so you're showing the things that are going on behind the curtain. Say, here's here you run these 3 OpenStack commands to make this happen, right? And that could be part of the way that people learn how to do OpenStack, say, because they use your tool and then they see what commands they had to run to do the thing they wanted to do. It could be part of a teaching tool, potentially. I'm not knowing the details of everything.
That makes sense, because that is how some OpenStack workshops are taught. They start with Horizon, and Horizon under the hood also just does OpenStack API calls, and then they move on to the making direct API calls and command line things. Unfortunately, Horizon it's maybe like that might be a bridge too far. So that's an interesting idea, is using it before you do the command line things. It'll be a gentler curve, a learning curve. The problem with Atmosphere always is the gap between the Atmosphere metaphors, and actually that's under the nomenclature. We can do that another time. Like even just the word project. And so that the abstractions are different between between Atmosphere and OpenStack, because it was built originally for something else. And so it's not easy to go from Atmosphere and then apply the same mental model to raw OpenStack commands, but it should be easier to go from Exosphere, maybe Horizon, maybe command line. Okay, I like it.
And I liked also that you had this motion of, because I know also a lot of people, and I'm not sure whether it was Steve or Jack, once we discussed about science gateways. Where are the science gateways really for the people who are directly involved in technology, who want to be involved more in technology, like with the Jupyter notebook, and even maybe for programmers, that they have their SDKs in a science gateway, things like that. And with your Exosphere, I think if you show first, maybe people can even define whether, when they start directly, like, oh, I'm a user and I might have a look later for something like define user groups in a way that they know, oh, yes, I'm the one, I want the graphical user interface. And if I want more, I just switch to another group or have this extra button. But otherwise, people who are stepping in and saying, oh yeah, I know how to do this command line, give me directly that view. I mean, that is probably something really nice at the beginning, because that helps also, as Shannon pointed out, if you have your elevator pitch or your 2-3 sentences, and then you have directly maybe 2 or 3 buttons saying, oh, this is for the different groups, the different presentation, then it fits directly more their needs, maybe.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I kind of like the For Dummies series, and they've always got those icons in the margins. It says, if you want more in-depth information, go ahead and read this section. And maybe you could come up with icons in various places, a consistent icon that you would use in various places for if you wanted to open that.
Or experience the atmosphere or horizon. You know, for horizon users, look here. For atmosphere users, look here. Because then they'll get the context better.
And if you are already in the black hole, look here.
Yeah, if you don't know what a sphere is, don't even look. Yeah. Is this written in Elm? I think I read that somewhere.
Yes.
So that's if you wanted to make it an extensible platform, it would have to be written in Elm, correct? Not adding more, say, underlying CLI calls.
There are 2 ways that there are at least 2 ways that you could extend this. So just to back up a little bit, so there's different audiences. One thing we have talked about is it is should be relatively straightforward to make a configurable interface so Jetstream could have a Jetstream branded version of it, but also being able to have a simplified interface that shows fewer knobs and options, or maybe even like a workshop mode where everything is pre-configured and you click on one button and you end up in a web shell where your bioinformatics tools are installed. Titus Brown uses Atmosphere explicitly like this, for example, when he teaches bioinformatics workshops. He wants his workshop participants to have as little to do with the software around it. He just wants them in a Unix shell with the bioinformatics tools that he wants so they can do bioinformatics. And so like a workshop version of Exosphere is entirely possible through configuration. And you can also have a super mode, admin, just show me everything, I know what's going on mode. So one way to extend Atmosphere would be to use the Elm programming language. But we have done something sneaky where we use an open source product called Cockpit from Red Hat that provides like a dashboard and a control panel for individual virtual machines. It shows you CPU graphs and memory info, and you can add new users to your servers. And we were actually inspired by the look and feel of Cockpit. And we can embed Cockpit inside the Exosphere interface, and that looks pretty seamless. We're actually causing problems for ourselves because people, this very thing that I'm saying, what's the boundaries of Exosphere and the cloud? We've blurred that in some places on purpose for trade-offs. So one way to extend Exosphere is I've experimented with writing Cockpit packages, and it's relatively easy to write a Cockpit package. I wrote a Jupyter Lab Cockpit package, which meant that once you've launched a server, on the left of this dashboard would be a Jupyter menu item. And I clicked on it, and it would launch a Jupyter notebook, and it'd give me a link, or it would actually embed the Jupyter notebook inside that user interface. And I didn't have to write any Elm to do that. That was just, I think, a bit of shell scripting and a bit of HTML. So there are different ways of extending Exosphere that doesn't involve writing Elm.
So like Helm charts?
Excuse me?
Like Helm charts for Kubernetes?
That is the next level. So that is the next level, is how do you do, this is part of what I think I mentioned earlier, container integration, is how do you help somebody spin up a Spark cluster? And so we're talking, I've been working with Vanessa Socket, and thanks to an introduction from Sandra, who was one of the authors of the Singularity project. and she had built something called a scientific file system. We want to be able to allow community curated kind of recipes like the Helm charts that you mentioned there. So because again, I'm not a domain scientist, and even between the different domains, the disciplines, people will have different needs. You don't want to necessarily have a material scientist look at the same catalog as the botanists. So it's yeah. So could there be like a community curated list of recipes that don't involve writing Elm, and people can basically opt in? So a bit like, add this material science catalog to my Exosphere app so that I can start launching workflows that are useful to my domain. So that's also roadmap far ahead. But yes, so yeah, exactly. Helm charts, that sort of thing is a way we want to be able to leverage the creativity. And again, I'm not omniscient. I want to build a tool that other people can use to help themselves. But ideally something that doesn't trap them in a particular cloud platform or a particular user interface. I'm going to make a note of that. How do you extend it? Because to extend Exosphere options.
You talked about using credits if you're on one of the commercial clouds. I guess this project, what's it called? Cloud Bank, where you kind of broker, I guess, time on these different cloud services in some way. Would they be interested in a platform like this, which is not cloud provider specific?
So I never thought about that. Okay, so Cloud Bank. Would they?
Is that in San Diego?
I don't know anything about them, so I'm going to have to look them up now. So can you tell me?
San Diego, yeah.
So can somebody explain to me what Cloud Bank roughly is? So is it?
It's like you put cloud credits in the bank and you can exchange them between different cloud services, and you can actually write proposals for so many credits. It's not specific to any one provider. I think that's kind of the thrust of it.
You know, I was just thinking that in some ways, if you hadn't already named it Exosphere, it might be better to have chosen Stratosphere, because then you could use all these atmospheric layers, right? You could say stratosphere, mesosphere, thermosphere, and then you could go on to exosphere, and eventually on to ionosphere. And it's nice because beneath that is the troposphere where the clouds are.
Oh, awesome.
So anyway, just a thought.
So actually, that's not a bad idea, because I mean we are starting from the you can think of it as starting from the outside in,
Right,
and building something more relatable.
The point is, you've still got a layer above exosphere that you can work with if you need to. That's the ionosphere. But inside, you've already got 1, 2, 3 layers before you're 3 layers above the cloud in this nomenclature.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, we're cheating. Like we're reaching right through those layers.
Yeah, no, it just occurred to me that there's potentially more you can do with the metaphor built into the name. I don't know.
To be honest, I think Exosphere it's a code name for us. It's a project name. It's not necessarily the final product name or something. And it could be that we have something that is a bit like Jetstream Atmosphere. Jetstream, people think about Jetstream. They don't necessarily think of, okay, Jetstream is a branded service of this Atmosphere product. Even inside Atmosphere, we had to decomplicate all the different words we were using for, because we had the user interface was called troposphere, which was talking to atmosphere, and the whole thing together was called atmosphere. So yes.
Yeah, no, I'm just happened to notice there were all these layers.
Yeah. So yeah.
The layer picture could be helpful for if you consider with what you discussed with the different groups, and that you hide for some users and you are not hiding for some other users. You could use this layer picture maybe.
Stack is more open than we thought, right?
Well, okay, so this has been super. Thank you very much. I don't want to take up, well, I've taken up the whole meeting, but with one of our challenges.
I wanted to say, but this is, yeah, first, yeah, finish your sentence, sorry.
No, I was going to say, if you're interested, if you have any ideas that maybe you didn't get to say now, or you formulate later, or please by all means ping me on the Slack or send me an email, julianp@arizona.edu, or I'm on the Science Gateway Slack, or tell Sandra, she knows where to find me. But yeah, any ideas that you might have.
Find you.
Is there a separate Slack channel for this?
Yes, there's a Gateway Ambassador Slack channel in SGCI.
It's part of SGCI. I
Yeah.
can find it.
I can point you to it when you don't find it. Okay, I think this was great. So my question, therefore, it's great that you finished by now, because I would have interrupted you in a minute. No, because I really like these brain trust exercises, and I'm quite sure that each of us has maybe a problem to discuss, and the size of this group is great for the discussion. And even if we become more and more people, we could have, maybe even breakout rooms or something. I would like more also from you, all the feedback. Is this a good use of the meeting time? We have 3 science ambassadors. So compared with the Gateway ambassadors, science ambassadors get some funding, for example, to go to a conference and talk about science gateways at a science conference, or to publish a paper, open source, about science. So we hope via this as the outreach to different sciences and underserved sciences more. So the science ambassadors will be also people who will present the science cases they have at this meeting. So they will probably give a talk of 20 minutes or something, and we can have another 10 minutes for questions, and then maybe a brain trust exercise again, if we like this format. So that is a decision we can make together. So my next question would be, is someone would like to do the brain trust exercise in the next meeting?
Well, now I'm hooked. Want to go to the next question?
I mean, I like the format, but of course, I also would like to hear from you, or whether you like it, or whether you think we should try different formats. Or...
I'm biased.
No,
so.
no, this was fun.
Okay. So as I said, there will be in between also, especially if we see like also talks for different topics, we just combine it, and maybe, some of the brain trust exercises are not like the full 50 minutes or 60 minutes, maybe some, are even much longer, and we are like, okay, we revisit it maybe in a month again. So, yes. Is anyone interested to do the next one?
I don't have a problem to share with the group, but I was actually hoping that Julian will get the nomenclature challenge. That was the one who got more of my interest, but we ran out of time.
Yeah,
But
totally
can I
fine.
propose that Julian continue?
I'm totally fine with visiting the next time the nomenclature challenge. I only wanted to give everyone the chance to speak up, so thank you. So if Julian, if you are fine with presenting the next time again and going to your next challenge.
I would love to, yes, thank you. I again, same, I didn't want to monopolize your valuable time, but it was fun and useful. So I'm very happy, unless somebody else wants to go ahead, I'd be happy to talk about the nomenclature challenge.
Okay, cool. So, and we have a full month to think about it already. If there are no further topics, I would think we are at the end of the meeting. Oh, by the way, Sean, and everyone who might have also submitted a paper to the special issue on Sciencescape this year, the first decisions went out, but some reviewers are a little bit behind on some papers. I didn't ask directly for your paper, but that is the stage at the moment.
Okay, thanks.
So it's summer. Some people are on vacation despite COVID. So, but they will send out reminders and everything. So
Vacation means you go to a different room.
yeah, yeah. I will have also 10 days vacation from the 20th, and it will be staycation. Yes, in Chicago. And I don't have it far to the lake, and we have these circles on the grass where we can go to movies, outside movies. And if you don't get a circle anymore, you have to leave, but that's okay. When I have vacation, I go early there. Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you very much. I think, Julian, this was a lot of fun and very productive, and to exchange ideas and to hear about different things. And I would say we see each other in a month again.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks for
Bye,
inviting me.
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody.
Well.